Nexus Station was the kind of place where laws went to die. It floated at the edge of civilized space, a massive structure built from the bones of old ships and broken dreams. Thousands of species passed through its markets every day. They came to buy. They came to sell. They came to disappear. Taiwu walked through the crowded market with his head down and his hands in his pockets. He was a cargo hauler, nothing more. 32 years old, with tired eyes and rough hands from years of loading freight. He worked the outer colonies, moving supplies between stations that most people had never heard of. It was honest work, quiet work. The kind of work that kept a man alive but never made him rich. The market was chaos. Stalls lined every path, selling everything from starship parts to strange fruits from distant worlds. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved through the narrow passages. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had bodies that Taiwu could not even begin to understand. The air smelled of smoke and spices and machine oil. He was here for one reason only. His ship, the Steady Horizon, needed new fuel cells. The old ones were failing, and without replacements, he and Kira would be stuck on this station for weeks. Kira was his partner, a sharp woman who handled communications and kept the ship running while Taiwu dealt with people on the ground. She was waiting aboard the freighter now, running system checks, and probably cursing at the broken coffee machine. Taiwu found the parts dealer he was looking for and made the trade quickly. Credits exchanged hands. The fuel cells were heavy, but he had carried worse. He loaded them into his transport cart and began the long walk back to the docking bay. That was when he heard the sound. It was a small sound. It's almost lost in the noise of the market. A cry of fear. A voice that did not belong to any species he knew well. But one he recognized anyway, Villani, the bird people as some humans called them. Fragile creatures with soft feathers and large eyes. They were known across the galaxy as pacifists. They had no weapons. No armies. No way to defend themselves? Most species left them alone out of pity. Others saw them as easy targets. Taiwu stopped walking. He told himself to keep moving. This was not his problem. He had a job to do. He had a ship to return to. He had a life that depended on staying out of trouble, but his feet would not move. He turned and looked through the crowd. Near a fabric stall, about 20 meters away, he saw her. A young Villani female, barely an adult by the standards of her people. Her feathers were pale blue, trembling slightly in the artificial light. Her name, though he did not know it yet, was Lyra. She was surrounded. 3 Grath males had formed a half circle around her, cutting off her escape. The Grath were reptilian creatures, massive and powerful. Their scales were dark green, almost black, and their eyes were cold like stones. They were known throughout the outer regions as slavers. They captured the weak and sold them to the highest bidder. It was illegal on most stations, but Nexus was not most stations. The leader of the group was the largest. His name was Borak, and his reputation was well known in these parts. He had taken hundreds of slaves over the years, men, women, children. He did not care. To him, they were all just cargo. Borak spoke to the Villani girl in a low voice. Taiwu could not hear the words, but he could see her reaction. Her whole body was shaking. Her wings, small and useless for flight, pressed tight against her back. She was looking around desperately, hoping someone would help her. No one did. The market continued around them as if nothing was happening. Aliens walked past without even glancing at the scene. Some of them noticed and quickly looked away. Others watched with mild interest, the way someone might watch a nature program about predators and prey. A few held up recording devices, capturing the moment for later entertainment. Taiwu felt something hot rise in his chest. It was a feeling he had not experienced in a long time. Anger. Not the small, quiet anger of daily frustrations. This was something deeper, something older. It was the anger of a species that had spent thousands of years fighting against impossible odds. The anger of survivors. He looked at the Grath, 3 of them, each one twice his size. He looked at his own hands. No weapons. No plan. He looked at the girl. She was crying now, silent tears running down her feathered face. She had given up hope. She believed that no one would save her, that no one cared, that she would disappear into the darkness of the station and never be seen again. Taiwu left his cart behind and walked toward her. The crowd seemed to part around him, though he was not sure if that was real or just his imagination. His heart was beating hard in his chest. His mouth was dry. Every logical part of his brain was screaming at him to stop, to turn around, to walk away. But humans were never very good at listening to logic. He stopped about 3 meters from the group. The Groth noticed him immediately. Borak turned his massive head and looked at Taiwu with something between confusion and amusement. "What do you want, small one?" Borak asked. His voice was deep, like rocks grinding together. Taiwu did not answer right away. He was looking at the girl. She was staring at him with wide eyes, not understanding what was happening. No one had ever stepped forward before. No one had ever tried to help. "Let her go," Taiwu said. The words came out steady, which surprised him. He did not feel steady. He felt like his whole body was about to shake apart. Borak laughed. It was an ugly sound, full of contempt. His 2 companions joined in, their hissing laughter filling the air around them. "Human," Borak said, tasting the word like it was something unpleasant. "You are far from your home. Do you know who I am?" "I know what you are," Taiwu said. "A slaver. A coward who preys on those who cannot fight back." The laughter stopped. Borak's eyes narrowed. He took a step toward Taiwu, and even that small movement seemed to shake the ground. He was massive, over 2 meters tall and built like a tank. His claws were long and sharp, designed for tearing through flesh and bone. "You should walk away, human," Borak said quietly. "Walk away, and I will forget this insult. Stay, and you will become cargo too." Taiwu looked at the girl one more time. She was watching him with something new in her eyes. Something that looked almost like hope. He thought about Kira, waiting on the ship. He thought about the fuel cells sitting in his cart. He thought about all the reasons he should turn around and leave this place. Then he thought about what kind of man he wanted to be. "No," Taiwu said. "I am not going anywhere. And neither is she." The market around them fell silent. Hundreds of aliens stopped what they were doing and turned to watch. Recording devices pointed at the scene from every direction. A single human stood between a helpless girl and 3 of the most dangerous slavers in the sector, and he refused to move. The silence in the market was heavy. It pressed down on everything like a physical weight. Hundreds of aliens stood frozen, watching the scene unfold before them. Some held their breath. Others whispered to their companions in languages Taiwu did not understand. But none of them moved to help. Borak stared at the human with cold reptilian eyes. For a long moment, he seemed unsure how to react. This was not how things usually went. When Borak claimed prey, others backed away. They lowered their eyes. They pretended not to see. That was how the galaxy worked. The strong took what they wanted, and the weak accepted it. But this human was not backing away. "You are either very brave or very stupid," Borak said slowly. "I have killed creatures twice your size. I have broken warriors from a dozen worlds. What makes you think you can stand against me?" Taiwu did not have a good answer to that question. He was not a soldier. He was not a fighter. He was a cargo hauler who spent most of his days loading boxes and repairing engines. His only weapon was a small utility knife on his belt, meant for cutting rope and opening packages. Against the Grath, it would be like fighting a tank with a toothpick. But he did not move. "She is under my protection now," Taiwu said. His voice was calm, though his heart was racing. "You will have to go through me." The 2 Grath behind Borak exchanged glances. One of them made a sound that might have been a laugh. To them, this was entertainment. A small human playing hero before being crushed like an insect. They had seen it before. They would see it again. Borak took another step forward. He was close now, close enough that Taiwu could smell his breath. It was hot and foul, like rotting meat. "Through you," Borak repeated. "Human, I will not even need to try." He struck without warning. His arm moved faster than something that large should have been able to move. His clawed hand came sweeping toward Tai Wu's head with enough force to take it clean off. But Tai Wu was already moving. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest. They did not have claws or fangs or armored skin. But millions of years of evolution had given them something else. Something that most aliens did not understand. Humans were built to survive. Their ancestors had chased prey across endless plains, running for hours without stopping. They had fought predators with nothing but sticks and stones. They had survived ice ages and famines and wars that had killed billions. The ones who had given up, who had surrendered to despair, had died long ago. The ones who remained were the descendants of those who had refused to quit. Tai Wu ducked under the swinging arm and rolled to the side. He came up on his feet, putting distance between himself and Borak. The crowd gasped. Recording devices tracked his movement. No one had expected him to dodge. Borak turned, his eyes wide with surprise. Then his face twisted into rage. "Lucky," he growled. "You will not be lucky twice." He charged forward, his massive body moving like a freight train. Tai Wu barely had time to react. He threw himself sideways, crashing into an empty market stall. Wood and fabric scattered around him. Pain shot through his shoulder where he had landed badly. But he got up. Borak was on him again in seconds. This time, Tai Wu could not dodge completely. A clawed hand caught him across the chest, tearing through his jacket and leaving 3 deep scratches in his skin. Blood began to soak through his shirt. Tai Wu staggered but did not fall. He backed away, putting a broken table between himself and the slaver. "Why do you keep fighting?" Borak demanded. He seemed genuinely confused. "You cannot win. You know this. Every creature in this market knows this. Why do you not submit?" Tai Wu wiped blood from his mouth. His ribs ached where Borak's arm had grazed him. Every breath was painful. "Because giving up is not something we do," Tai Wu said. Borak roared and swept the table aside like it was made of paper. He grabbed Tai Wu by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Tai Wu's feet kicked uselessly in the air. He could not breathe. Dark spots began to appear at the edges of his vision. But even then, he did not give up. His hand found the utility knife on his belt. With the last of his strength, he pulled it free and drove it into Borak's arm. The blade was small and not very sharp. Against Grath's scales, it should have done nothing. But Tai Wu did not aim for the scales. He aimed for the soft tissue between them, the joints where the armor was weakest. The knife sank in. Borak screamed and released his grip. Tai Wu fell to the ground, gasping for air. His throat felt like it was on fire. But he forced himself to roll away before Borak could recover. The other 2 Graths started forward. But Borak held up his injured arm to stop them. "No," he said, his voice thick with pain and fury. "This one is mine." Green blood dripped from the wound in his arm. It was not a serious injury, not for a creature his size. But it was the first time anyone had made him bleed in years. The shame of it burned worse than the pain. In the crowd, the whispers grew louder. Aliens pointed at the scene and spoke in amazed voices. A human had wounded a Grath. A single, unarmed human had stood against one of the most feared slavers in the sector and drawn blood. Lyra watched from behind a fallen stall, her large eyes fixed on Tai Wu. She did not understand what she was seeing. Her people were pacifists. They did not fight. They did not resist. When danger came, they ran or they surrendered. The concept of standing against a stronger enemy, of choosing pain over submission, was completely foreign to her. But watching this human, something stirred inside her. Something that felt almost like courage. Borak pulled the knife from his arm and threw it aside. His eyes were burning with hatred now. This was no longer about capturing a slave. This was about pride. This was about showing everyone in this market what happened to those who defied him. "I am going to kill you slowly," Borak promised. "I am going to break every bone in your body. And when you are finally dead, I will take the bird girl anyway. Your sacrifice will mean nothing." Tai Wu pushed himself to his feet. His legs were shaking. Blood ran down his chest and dripped onto the floor. He could feel at least 2 broken ribs grinding against each other with every breath. But he was still standing. "Then stop talking," Taiwu said, "and come finish it." Borak charged again, and somewhere in the crowd, recording devices captured every moment of what came next. Within hours, the footage would spread across the galactic network. Within days, billions of beings would watch it. A human, small and wounded and outmatched in every possible way. Refusing to stay down, the galaxy was about to learn something important about humanity. They did not know how to quit. The fight was not fair. It was never meant to be fair. Borak was a killer, a creature bred for violence and trained in it since birth. Taiwu was a cargo hauler who had never been in a real fight in his life. The outcome should have been decided in seconds, but seconds turned into minutes. And Taiwu was still standing. Borak's fist connected with Taiwu's stomach, lifting him off his feet and sending him crashing into a pile of discarded crates. The wood shattered around him. Something cracked in his chest, and white-hot pain exploded through his body. He could not tell if it was another broken rib or something worse. For a moment, he lay still. His body was screaming at him to stay down. Every nerve, every muscle, every instinct was telling him that the fight was over, that he had done enough, that no one would blame him for giving up now. But then he thought of the girl. Lyra, still hiding behind that fallen stall, still watching with those wide, terrified eyes. If he stayed down, Borak would take her. She would disappear into the dark corners of the galaxy, sold to the highest bidder, and no one would ever know what happened to her. Taiwu put his hands on the ground and pushed himself up. The crowd made a sound. It was not quite a gasp, not quite a whisper. It was something else entirely, something that had no name in any language. It was the sound of beings watching the impossible happen. Borak stared at the human with something new in his eyes. It was not fear, not exactly, but it was close. It was the first hint of doubt he had felt in a very long time. Borak demanded. His voice was hoarse, almost desperate. "Why do you keep getting up? You are broken. You are bleeding. You cannot win. Why do you not stay down?" Taiwu spat blood onto the floor. He could barely see straight. The world around him was blurred and spinning, but he forced himself to focus on Borak, on those cold, reptilian eyes. Because Taiwu said slowly, each word costing him more than he wanted to admit, "There is a girl behind me, and as long as I am breathing, you do not touch her." Borak roared and charged again. This time, Taiwu did not try to dodge. He knew he was too slow now to hurt. Instead, he watched Borak come and waited for the right moment. Just before impact, he dropped low and threw his body into Borak's legs. It was a desperate move. It should not have worked. Borak was too big, too heavy, too strong. But Taiwu hit him at just the right angle, just as Borak's weight was shifting forward. The slaver stumbled, his momentum carrying him past Taiwu and into a heavy metal support beam. The impact shook the entire section of the market. Borak crashed to the ground, outdazed but not defeated. Taiwu scrambled away, looking for anything he could use as a weapon. His eyes found a broken piece of metal from one of the destroyed stalls. It was sharp on one end, about the length of his forearm. Not much, but better than nothing. He grabbed it just as Borak rose to his feet. "Enough games," Borak growled. He was hurt now, truly hurt. A dark bruise was forming on the side of his head where he had hit the beam. But pain only seemed to make him angrier. "I will tear you apart with my bare hands." He came at Taiwu again, slower this time but more careful. His arms spread wide, ready to catch the human no matter which way he tried to run. Taiwu did not run. He waited until Borak was almost on top of him, then ducked under the reaching arms and drove the metal shard upward. He aimed for the face, the one place where Grath's scales were thinnest. The improvised weapon found its mark. Borak screamed. It was a terrible sound, filled with pain and rage and disbelief. He staggered backward, clutching at his left eye. Green blood poured between his fingers. Mixing with the dust and debris on the floor, the other two Grath finally moved forward. They had been content to watch before, amused by their leader's game. But this was no longer a game. This was a human who had just blinded their master in one eye. Taiwu turned to face them, the bloody metal still in his hand. He could barely stand. His vision was fading in and out, but he raised the weapon and prepared to fight. And then his earpiece crackled to life. "Hey, Taiwu." Kira's voice cut through the pain and the noise. "What the hell is happening?" "I can see the commotion on the station cameras." "Little busy," Taiwu managed to say. "I can see that." "Listen to me carefully. I contacted station security. They are on their way." 5 minutes. 5 minutes. It might as well have been 5 hours. Taiwu looked at the two Grath advancing on him and at Borak still screaming in the background. He did not know if he could last 5 more seconds. "Just hold on," Kira said. Her voice was tight with worry. "Do you hear me? Whatever you have to do, just hold on." The two Grath were close now. They moved more carefully than Borak had, spreading out to flank Taiwu on both sides. They had learned from their leader's mistakes. They were not going to underestimate this human. Taiwu shifted his grip on the metal shard. His hands were slick with blood, both his own and Borak's. Every breath sent sharp pain through his chest. He could feel himself getting weaker with every passing second, but he was not done yet. "Come on then," he said to the two Grath. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried clearly in the silent market. "Let us see if you are braver than your boss." They came at him together. The next few minutes were a blur of violence. Taiwu fought with everything he had left, which was not much. He dodged when he could and took the hits when he could not. He stabbed and slashed with his makeshift weapon, drawing blood whenever he found an opening. But he was losing. Slowly, inevitably, he was losing. A heavy blow knocked him to the ground. He tried to get up, but his arms would not support him. He rolled onto his back and saw one of the Grath standing over him, claws raised for the killing blow. This was it. This was how it ended. But the blow never came. Instead, there was a loud noise, sharp and electronic. The Grath above him froze, then collapsed forward, a stun bolt embedded in his back. Shouts filled the market as station security finally arrived, dozens of armored officers pouring into the area with weapons drawn. The remaining Grath tried to run, but was brought down within seconds. Urok, still clutching his ruined eye, was surrounded by a ring of officers and forced to his knees. Taiwu lay on the ground, staring up at the distant ceiling of the station. He could hear voices around him, some speaking languages he knew and others he did not. Someone was calling for a medical team. Someone else was asking what had happened, but all he could think about was the girl. He turned his head, searching through the chaos until he found her. Lyra was still there, emerging from behind the fallen stall. Her pale blue feathers were dusty and disheveled, but she was unharmed. She was safe. Taiwu smiled. Then the darkness took him. The medical bay was cold and white and smelled of chemicals. Taiwu floated somewhere between sleep and waking, his mind drifting through fragments of memory and dream. He saw his mother's face, kind and worn from years of hard work. He saw Earth, green and blue, and impossibly far away. He saw the Villani girl, her pale feathers trembling in the artificial light of the market. When he finally opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Lyra. She was sitting beside his bed, her thin legs folded beneath her in a way that looked uncomfortable but probably was not for her species. Her large eyes were fixed on his face, watching for any sign of movement. When she saw him wake, she made a soft sound that might have been relief. "You are alive," she said. Her voice was gentle like wind through leaves. "Barely," Taiwu croaked. His throat felt like sandpaper. "Where am I?" "Station Medical Center. Your friend brought you here," the human female with the sharp voice. Kira, of course Kira had been the one to make sure he got treatment. She probably had yelled at every doctor in the facility until they fixed him up properly. Taiwu tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his chest and stomach, so intense that it stole his breath. He fell back against the pillow, gasping. "You should not move," Lyra said quickly. "The doctors said you have many broken bones. Your ribs, your arm, something in your shoulder. They said they had never seen a patient with so many injuries who was still conscious when they arrived." "Humans are stubborn," Taiwu said. He tried to smile, but even that hurt. Lyra was quiet for a moment. She seemed to be struggling with something, trying to find words for thoughts that did not come easily. Finally, she spoke again. Why? It was the same question Borak had asked. It's the same question that seemed to confuse every alien who had witnessed the fight. Taiwu had known it was coming, but he still did not have a good answer. Why what? He asked, though he knew exactly what she meant. Why did you help me? Lyra's voice trembled slightly. I am not your kind. I am not your responsibility. You did not know me. You had no reason to risk your life for mine, but you did it anyway. I do not understand. Taiwu turned his head to look at her properly. She was so small, so fragile. Her feathers caught the light of the medical bay, shimmering with colors that had no names in human languages. She looked like something that should be protected, something precious and rare. Where I come from, Taiwu said slowly, we have a saying. It goes something like this. The only thing necessary for evil to win is for good people to do nothing. Lyra tilted her head, processing the words. I do not understand. What does that mean? It means that when you see something wrong happening, and you choose to look away, you become part of the problem. You might not be the one doing the wrong thing, but you are letting it happen. You are giving evil permission to continue. But you were alone. You had no weapons, could not possibly have won that fight. I know, Taiwu admitted. I knew that before I stepped forward. But that did not change what I had to do. Lyra fell silent again. Her eyes were glistening with something that might have been tears, though Taiwu did not know if Villani could cry in the same way humans did. My people do not fight, she said quietly. We have never fought. When danger comes, we run. When enemies capture us, we submit. We have always believed that resistance only leads to more suffering. Maybe that is true sometimes, Taiwu said. But sometimes suffering is the price of freedom. Sometimes you have to be willing to hurt in order to protect what matters. Before Lyra could respond, the door to the medical bay slid open. Kira walked in carrying a cup of something that smelled like coffee. Her face was hard, her eyes sharp. But when she saw Taiwu awake, something in her expression softened. About time, she said. I was starting to think I would have to drag your unconscious body back to the ship. Nice to see you too, Taiwu said. Kira set the coffee down on a nearby table and crossed her arms. Do you have any idea how much trouble you are in? The station authorities want to talk to you. The medical staff wants to keep you under observation for a week. And I have to explain to our clients why their cargo is going to be late. Is Borak and his crew in custody? Yes. Kira's voice carried a note of satisfaction. Turns out, operating. A slaving operation in full view of hundreds of witnesses and recording devices is bad for business. The station council had no choice but to act. Borak lost an eye, by the way. The doctors say he will never see out of it again. Taiwu did not feel bad about that. He probably should have, but he did not. What happens now? He asked. Now you rest. The doctors patched you up as best they could, but you need time to heal. We are stuck here for at least another few days. And her? Taiwu nodded toward Lyra. Kira looked at the Villani girl, her expression unreadable. She has been sitting there since you arrived. Refused to leave. Said she owes you something. Lyra stood up, her movements graceful, despite her obvious nervousness. She faced Kira directly, though the human woman was much taller than her. I owe him a life debt, Lyra said. Her voice was steady, now filled with a quiet determination that had not been there before. Among my people, when someone saves your life at great risk to their own, you are bound to them until you can repay the debt.
Ow.
It is our oldest tradition. A life debt, Kira repeated.
Right.
And what exactly does that involve? I must stay with him. Help him. Protect him if I can, though I know I am not strong. The debt is not satisfied until I have given equal value in return. Kira looked at Taiwu. Her eyebrows were raised, but there was a hint of amusement in her eyes. You went to get fuel cells and came back with a new crew member. That has to be some kind of record. I did not ask for this, Taiwu said. It does not matter if you asked, Lyra said firmly. The debt exists. I will not abandon it. There was a long moment of silence. Kira studied the Villani girl carefully, then shrugged. Fine, we have a spare bunk. But you pull your weight on the ship, no freeloaders. Lyra nodded quickly, her feathers rustling with what might have been happiness. I will work, I will learn. I will be useful. Kira turned back to Taiwu. Get some rest. We will talk more when you can walk without falling over. She left the room, taking her coffee with her. Taiwu watched her go, then looked at Lyra. You do not have to do this, he said. I did not save you to get something in return. I know, Lyra said softly. That is why the debt matters so much. You asked for nothing. You expected nothing. You simply saw someone in need and chose to help. Among my people, that kind of selflessness is the rarest thing in the universe. She moved back to her chair and sat down again. Her eyes were still watching him, but now there was something new in them. Something that looked almost like hope. Rest now, she said. I will be here when you wake. Taiwu wanted to argue, but he was too tired. The pain medication was pulling him back under, and his eyes were already closing. As he drifted off to sleep, he heard Lyra humming softly. It was a strange melody, alien and beautiful, and it followed him down into the darkness like a promise of things to come. 5 days passed before Taiwu could walk on his own. The doctors were amazed at his recovery, though they did not say so directly. Humans healed fast, faster than most species in the galaxy. It was one of the few advantages their biology offered. A leftover from the days when their ancestors had needed to recover quickly from wounds inflicted by predators and enemies. He spent most of that time in the medical bay, sleeping and eating and letting his body put itself back together.
Ow.
Lyra was always nearby, helping where she could. Learning about human medicine and nutrition with the intense focus of someone who had decided to master a new skill. Kira came and went, handling the ship and dealing with the endless complications that came from being stuck on Nexus Station longer than planned. On the morning of the 6th day, Kira walked into Taiwu's room with a strange expression on her face. She was carrying a datapad, which she held up without saying anything. What is that? Taiwu asked. Watch. She tapped the screen, and a video began to play. It was footage from the market, captured by dozens of different recording devices and edited together into a single narrative. Taiwu saw himself walking toward the Grath. He saw himself standing between Lyra and Borak. He watched the fight unfold, saw himself get knocked down again and again, saw himself rise every single time. The video had been viewed billions of times. The number at the bottom of the screen was still climbing. It went everywhere, Kira said quietly. Every station, every colony, every world connected to the galactic network. Everyone has seen it. Taiwu stared at the screen, not sure what to say. He had not thought about the recordings at the time. He had been too focused on survival. But now, seeing it from the outside, he understood why it had spread so far. It was not just a fight. It was a statement. In the video, a lone human stood against 3 creatures twice his size. He had no weapons. He had no backup. He had every reason to walk away, but he chose to stay. He chose to fight. He chose to put himself between a helpless stranger and the monsters who wanted to take her. And when he was beaten down, broken, bleeding from a dozen wounds, he got back up, again and again and again. The comments, Kira continued. Millions of them. From species all over the galaxy, they are all asking the same question. They want to know what humans are made of. They want to know how we keep going when everything says we should stop. What did you tell them? Kira smiled, but it was a sad smile. I did not tell them anything. I do not think I could explain it even if I tried. It is just who we are. It is in our blood. She put the datapad down on his bed. There is more. A diplomatic message came through this morning. From the Villani homeworld. Taiwu looked at Lyra, who was standing by the window. She seemed as surprised as he was. What do they want? He asked. They want to thank you. Officially. Through proper diplomatic channels. They are also asking for trade negotiations with human colonies. Talks have been stalled for years because they did not trust us. But now, after seeing what you did for one of their own, they want to try again. The implications of that settled over Taiwu like a weight. He had not thought beyond the moment when he stepped forward in the market. He had not considered what might come after. He had just seen someone in trouble, and decided to help. And now, because of that decision, entire worlds might change their relationship with humanity. "I did not do it for this," Taiwu said. "I know," Kira replied. "That is exactly why it matters." She left him alone with Lyra and the datapad. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Taiwu scrolled through the comments on the video, reading messages from beings he had never met and would probably never meet. Some were confused. Some were impressed. Some were skeptical, convinced the footage had been altered or staged. But many of them said the same thing, in different languages, in different ways. If this is what humans are like, perhaps they are worth knowing after all. Eventually, Lyra spoke. "People have a saying," she said softly. "The measure of a soul is what it does when no one is watching." Taiwu looked up at her. "I've heard you mention that before." She moved away from the window and sat on the edge of his bed. Her pale feathers caught the light, shimmering with colors that seemed to shift as she moved. "You stood up for me when no one else would. You fought for me when you had nothing to gain. That is what my people value above all else." Seemed like the right thing to do. Yes, it was the right thing. But most beings do not do the right thing when it costs them. They do the right thing when it is easy, when it benefits them, when others are watching. You did it when it was hard, when it would have been so simple to walk away, when everyone expected you to give up. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "My people say that the measure of a soul is what it does when no one is watching." But everyone was watching in that market. Hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds. And what they saw was humanity. Taiwu did not know how to respond to that. He had never thought of himself as a representative of his entire species. He was just a cargo hauler, a man who moved boxes from one place to another. He was nobody important. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the measure of a species was not its leaders, or its armies, or its technology. Maybe it was the ordinary people, the ones who worked quiet jobs and lived quiet lives. Maybe it was what they did when they saw something wrong, and they had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Maybe humanity's greatest strength was not in its warships or its weapons. Maybe it was in the stubborn refusal to look away. 3 days later, Taiwu was strong enough to leave the medical bay. He walked slowly, with Lyra at his side and Kira a few steps ahead. His ribs still ached, and his arm was wrapped in a healing cast. But he could move under his own power again. The steady horizon was waiting for them at the docking bay. It was not a beautiful ship. It was old and battered and held together by patches and prayers. But it was home, and Taiwu felt something loosen in his chest when he saw it, as they approached the boarding ramp. A group of aliens nearby stopped what they were doing. They turned to look at Taiwu, with expressions he could not quite read. One of them, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms, raised a hand in what might have been a salute. Others followed. All around the docking bay, beings of different species paused their work and acknowledged the passing human. Some nodded. Some made gestures from their own cultures. One small creature with large ears said something in a language Taiwu did not understand. But the tone was unmistakably respectful. Kira glanced back at him. "Looks like you are famous. I would rather not be. It's too late for that." They boarded the ship and sealed the hatch behind them. The steady horizon felt the same as always. Smelling of recycled air and engine oil, and something Kira had burned in the kitchen last week. Taiwu breathed it in and felt himself relax for the first time in days. Lyra looked around the interior with wide eyes. Everything was strange to her, designed for human bodies and human comfort. But she did not seem afraid. She seemed curious, eager to learn about this new world she had entered. "Welcome aboard," Taiwu said. "Thank you." Her voice was soft but steady. "I will try not to be a burden." "You will not be a burden. You are crew now." Kira was already at the controls, running through the pre-flight checklist. "If you two are done having a moment, we have a schedule to keep. The fuel cells are installed. Systems are green. We can leave whenever you are ready." Taiwu settled into the co-pilot seat, wincing slightly as his ribs protested. Lyra found a jump seat nearby and strapped herself in, watching everything with fascination. "Where are we going?" she asked. Taiwu looked at Kira. Kira looked back at him and shrugged. Wherever the work takes us, Taiwu said. Same as always. The steady horizon lifted off from Nexus Station and slipped into the darkness between the stars. Behind them, the massive structure grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light in the infinite black. Ahead of them was the unknown. New jobs, new ports, new dangers, but also new opportunities. The galaxy was watching humanity now, really watching. For the first time since they had left Earth, and if they were smart, Taiwu thought, they would not look away, because humans were just getting started.